Hello and welcome to this morning's class of the School of Consciousness. Today, what we're going to be talking about is how to find your true self. So we're going to be looking at who you really are. And the reason why this is important to know is because we spend so much of our life living up to the expectations of others or what we believe that we should do because that's what society says is right, or that's what our friends say is right, or that's what our family says is right. There's this we often spend our time and our energy doing things that we might not actually want to do. And that can cause a lot of emotional instability, right? We have a lot of mental health issues in the world these days. Anxiety and depression is going up. And I really believe that one of the reasons why is because most people are not living life true to their own values. We're trying to fit ourselves into a society that is broken. And because of that, we are getting sick because we can't fit ourselves into a society that is broken and expect ourselves to live a healthy and happy life. If you try to fit into a broken system, you are going to become broken as well. So, this is why it's so important to find out who we really are and what we really find as important in our lives. So then we can then contribute to society or to the community or to the world in a meaningful way. So you're going to have a lot of clarity on what your purpose is, what your values are, what your vision for your life is. And we're also going to create a mission statement today. So we're going to do a lot of work. That's why I said make sure you have a pen and paper. I'm going to explain to you guys why it's so important that we do this and how it works from a human behavioral level, the reasons why we sometimes swing all the way over to this anxious or fearful state, and then sometimes we swing over to this other state where we're doing things for everyone else, and really how to find balance in that. Because if we continue to live our life for everyone else, we're going to get to the end of our life and we're going to have regrets, right? And we don't want that, right? They say that one of the top five regrets of the dying is that they didn't live life the way that they wanted to live life, right? They didn't do what they actually wanted to do, whether that meant that they were working too much or they just weren't, expressing themselves in a way that felt unique to them. That's one of the biggest regrets people have, right? And we don't really want to end up like that. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to end up like that, right? At the end of my life, having all these regrets about what I could have done or what I wanted to do that I didn't do, right? I want to get to the end of the life and go, sweet, that was a good life. I did everything that I could in my power to live the best life that I could live. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, right? We're going to get very, very clear on what it is that you actually want out of your life and how you can start making your decisions based off that. Because, like I said before, I'm going to show you why we end up in such strong emotional states, right? And this is really some deep work around human behavior. And it's really going to help you recognize your unconscious patterns. So the patterns that you play out in your life that you might not even be aware of that you're doing. This is going to help you understand why you are doing those things. And it's going to help you to recognize and pick up the patterns quicker, because that's a very helpful skill to have, pattern recognition. So I'm going to start by showing you guys a visual diagram on the whiteboard of a concept which is by a psychoanalyst and neurologist called Sigmund Freud. Now, Sigmund Freud is quite a famous psychoanalyst and neurologist, and he came up with this idea of the ego, the superego, and the id. So these are three parts of the self, right? He's saying that in each person there is these three different parts of the self, right? And in our life we tend to swing between all three of them, right? So it's not that either of these is necessarily bad or anything like that. It's just that this is kind of how we behave as humans. So I'm going to put a little line here between each of these three circles, and I'm going to start to explain each one to you. So the one that's straight down, that's the ego, right? The one that's over here to the left, we'll call that the id. And then the one over here to the right is the superego. So I'm going to explain all of this to you now. So you can think of the id as like the impulses, the fears, the instincts, right? The emotional, you could also think of it as the internal state. We could also, just for the purpose of contrast, we could call this negative, although it's not necessarily negative, it's just one way to look at it, right? Whereas the other side is the super ego. And this is what we call moral authority, or what Freud called moral authority. It's implanted values from others, and it is what you should do, right? It's essentially people pleasing. It's always external, and we could see it as positive. Now, why would we see that as positive, right? Because this is kind of like, the moral authority. It's kind of like, let's call it the angel, right? It's that we have this idea that we should listen to others because other people are right, or we should listen to that because that's the right way to do things, or we should do it like that. That's what everyone in society says. It's a moral authority. It's usually a figure or figures that we hold with high regard, and we think we get these ideas from these figures who are like the moral authorities in our life. So sometimes that could be religion, it could be your parents, it could be teachers, it could be society as a whole. It's all of those things that you think you should do. Or maybe it's just a friend of yours who's telling you that you should do something. Or maybe they're not even telling you, but internally in your brain, you are thinking that you should do something because that's what they would want you to do. Or you shouldn't do something because they wouldn't want you to do that. Right. So we kind of picture these figures as like angels almost, right? That's why I've called it positive. Where over here, you've called it negative because it's kind of like the devil, right? It's like the fears, the impulses, the emotions. So you can imagine that you've got the devil on one shoulder and you've got the angel on the other shoulder, right? Now, just think about this, right? Have you ever felt like you've had two voices happening internally? So in your inner dialogue, there's one voice, but then there's another voice. There's like these two different voices. So sometimes it can be hard to make a decision because you're not sure what you actually want to do, because you've got these two different competing voices in your head. Or maybe there's three different competing voices, right? Everyone has, you know, multiple voices in their head, and it's not necessarily some crazy thing where it's like, oh my God, this person has got multiple voices in their head, they must be crazy. Everyone has these different parts of ourself, and sometimes we think from these different parts of ourself, right? So sometimes we're thinking from our fears and our impulses, whereas sometimes we're thinking from what we think others should have us doing, right? So we switch between the two. So you might be wondering now, what's this middle one, right? What is the middle one? What's the middle pendulum? Now, this is what they called, or what Freud called, the ego. Now, a lot of people think the ego is bad. The ego is not actually bad, right? If you're really connected to your true self, right? This is you, right? It's your values, it's your purpose, it's your vision, it's your mission, it's your true self. It's who you really are and who you really want to be. So you can imagine this as a pendulum, right? Let's call it the pendulum. And so over here, you've got the angel, the super ego, the moral authority. You got the implanted values, what you think you should do, people pleasing, always thinking about the external. And then over here, you've got the devil, right? Which is the impulses, the fears, the instincts, the emotions. It's always the internal. It's like, I'm struggling inside. I don't know. I can't get out of this emotional state, or my thoughts are taking over me and I can't control it. And it's all happening internal. So what happens is we will swing from side to side. Now, just to give you an example, let's say, like I've got a client who recently I've been talking to, right? And it was their birthday, and they, didn't really want to drink or go out and do everything that they did, but they did it because they felt like they should. They felt like they should because everyone else was doing it, and all of their friends wanted them to go out, and so they should go out. So this person, he has the true self and their values and what they want for their life. But on this particular weekend, on their birthday, they decided that they would go out and drink and do what everyone else expected them to do. So this is just an example. So this person now on this pendulum is going to swing over towards this moral authority. These are the implanted values or the shoulds from the external. So he's basically been people pleasing, right? Didn't really want to go out, didn't really want to, celebrate his birthday in that way, but decided to do it. And so therefore swinging over to this super ego side. So he's making the decision based off his idea of moral authority, implanted values from others, what he should do, what everyone expects him to do. And he thinks that's a positive thing. I'm going to do that because that's what everyone expects me to do, right? So he swings over this way. Now, what happens when you swing one way? If you swing a pendulum one way, what happens? It goes back the other way. If you swing a pendulum one way, it goes back the other way. And why does that happen? Because in the universe, there is a perfect balance. The universe is perfectly balanced, right? Now, if you Google, what is the net electric charge of the universe? If you Google this, it's a scientific question. What is the net electric charge of the universe? It says the answer is exactly 0. So the universe is perfectly balanced, right? And if you Google what is the net electric charge of the universe, you're going to see that the net electric charge of the universe is 0. There is no electric charge of the universe. It's 0. It's perfectly balanced out. So what does that mean? It means the positive and the negatives perfectly balance each other out, right? Positive charges and negative charges are perfectly balanced. So when you swing over to the angel, right, or the super ego, or the moral authority, or the implanted values, what you think you should do, what happens? The universe is perfectly balanced, so you swing back the other way. So you will then swing back to the emotions. Now, this particular person, I spoke to them this week after the weekend, and would you believe it? They're feeling extremely anxious, extremely upset, extremely emotional, right? So essentially what's happening here is that person has swung over to the moral authority, the implanted values, done something that they didn't really want to do because they felt like they should. This is people pleasing. And after that, they swing all the way back over to the fears, the instincts, the emotional, and they have this really negative internal experience of anxiety. So what we need to understand about this is firstly, this pendulum of the self, let's call it the pendulum of self, right? It's actually trying to balance you out. It's actually trying to balance you out. Because if you swing all the way over this way and then you swing all the way back over that way, that is the essentially the mechanism within yourself to find balance. So you might have heard that your emotions are your guidance. You're like an internal guidance system, right? Emotions are an internal guidance system. You might want to write that down. Emotions are an internal guidance system. You might even want to draw this pendulum in your book as well, just so you can really understand this. But your emotions are an internal guidance system, and they are guiding you back to your true self. So people get anxiety and they often wonder or anger or frustration or any emotional experience you can have. You'll often have that happen, and then you might start to think there's something wrong with you. Why am I so emotional? Is there something wrong with me? What have I done? Why am I not normal? Why am I not stable? Why am I not balanced? Why am I not calm? everyone wants to be calm or confident or happy, right? And so we have this kind of like fantasy that we should always be happy. And when we're not happy, we think something's wrong with us and we start to think like something's going on. But really, your emotions are an internal guidance system. They're trying to guide you back to balance. Because if you swing all the way out here, you're going to swing all the way back, and the emotions are essentially going to guide you back to your true self. So every time you get anxious, right, instead of thinking, what's wrong with me, it's better to think, what is this trying to teach me? Because on the macro scale, the universe is perfectly balanced. Now, we are part of the universe. We're not separate to it. You know, in nature, everything is perfectly balanced, right? The tree goes up, the roots go down. As above, so below. We have the day and then we have the night, right? We have the winter and then we have the summer. Everything in nature is perfectly balanced. Everything in the universe is perfectly balanced. And so on a micro level, within ourself, we have this balance mechanism. Our internal systems are trying, our internal psyche is trying to always balance itself out. And so this is why we swing from side to side. Now, also, it could work the other way. Let's say you swing over into an anxious state or a fearful and angry state, and you find yourself really angry. You might then swing all the way back to the other side. And because let's say you're anxious or you're feeling guilty or, you're sad or you're upset or something like that, you might actually swing back over to the moral authority and try to get like validation from someone. You'll reach out to someone or you'll try to get validation from someone and you'll try to get reassurance from someone to make you feel better, right? This happened with my wife and I on the weekend. So I was away on the weekend and she was taking care of Coco, our 18-month-old daughter, all by herself. And one morning we FaceTimed. And then on the FaceTime, Missy, my wife, was obviously just struggling a little bit with Coco because, it's hard when you've got a 1-year-old. You're trying to take care of a 1-year-old by yourself. So Missy was struggling a little bit and she was a bit frazzled and a bit frustrated and just a bit snappy at me on the phone, which is fine. Like, I understand. But we ended up, ending the phone call on not a great, ending. It was a bit kind of emotional and frustrated. She was a bit frustrated. So we kind of, ended on this kind of snappy tone. And then about an hour later, so this is essentially the impulses, right? The fears, the instincts, the emotions, it's like anger, right? Or frustration, it's emotions. And so she swung over to the frustration and to the anger, which is fine. It's part of being a human. We all do it. And then about an hour later, she swings back and so sends me a message and saying, Josh, can you just tell me that you love me and like that I'm a good mum? So she was looking to me to help her balance herself. She's seeing like, okay, I'm going to have that reassurance from Josh that I'm a good mum and he loves me. And that's fine as well, right? Like I'm saying, there's not anything wrong with this. It's just we have to understand our natural mechanisms for trying to balance ourselves out. So that happened just after we were talking about this at an event that I was at on the weekend, and I was just having light bulbs clicking, going, wow, this is the exact same thing. It's the emotion, and then it's the swing back to the reassurance, trying to get reassurance from someone else, some like the external. And so it's really just a balancing mechanism. That was her way of finding balance in herself at that time. So it's really, really interesting stuff. When you start to be aware of this and you start to understand how this all works, you'll start to be able to recognize your patterns better. You'll start to understand your emotions better. You'll start to understand your behaviors better and why you're doing things the way that you're doing things, because we are always trying to seek this balance, right? We really want to be here. People say that the ego is a bad thing. The ego is not a bad thing. It's only if it's like unchecked or it's too proud or too stubborn or anything like that. Then it can be, something that's not helpful, right? So we want to actually find balance in the ego or the true self. Like we want to be who we really are, right? And to do that, to be able to stay balanced in that, we need to essentially find our values and our purpose and our vision and our mission. That's what we're going to do today. Now, I'm just going to show you another example of what it could look like for your life if you are living unbalanced, right? So up here, we've got a new line and we've got a circle, right? Over here, this is where you are. This is you, right? So we're going to go you. And then down the other end is your goals, right? Or, the things that you want to achieve in your life. I'm just going to call them your goals for now, right? Because that's an easy word to describe it. So you're over here, your goals are over here. Now, if you are living in this massive pendulum swing of the emotions and then the people pleasing and those kinds of things, doing things for other people. When I say people pleasing, that's what I'm talking about. It's just like doing things that you don't really want to do, but you feel like you should do them for other people, right? If you're living either as a people pleaser, which is like you're doing everything for everyone else, or some people tend to err on either one side or the other. This angel side, it's like we think we're doing the right thing because we're pleasing everyone, keeping everyone else happy, but we're not doing anything for ourselves. Or then if you're over on the other side and you're too emotional, sometimes that can be more of like a victim kind of mentality where it's always so hard and you just can't control your emotions and nothing ever works, and it's like this pit of despair and kind of hopelessness. Like, what's the point, right? Because you're just stuck in the emotions. So if either one of those resonate with you, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go towards your goals still, because every human wants to achieve certain things. Like, it's a very natural part of being a human. It's like you want to do certain things, right? You want to achieve a certain kind of thing in your life, whatever that is. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's work. It could be just, your own internal sense of happiness. Like, usually we're always reaching for something, right? We're always reaching to achieve something or do something or have something or even to be something. So that's your goal, right? Let's just call it your goal for now. And then you're over here. If you're swinging wildly on this pendulum, it's going to look like this. You're going to probably have some high highs, and then you're going to come crashing down, and you're going to have some low lows, and then you're going to come up again, and you'll maybe have another high high, and you might go low low again, right? And then maybe you get taken off track, and you end up over here because either A, you've done things that other people thought you should do, or B, you haven't been able to control your emotional state and it's controlling you. If that's the case, you end up never achieving your goals and you end up over here going, what the hell am I doing with my life? I feel like I'm lost. We don't want that to happen, obviously. So what we need to do is we need to, like I said, find balance in the ego, the values, the purpose, the vision, the mission, the true self, right? Not this like bad ego that everyone thinks, but like a very healthy sense of the ego, right? It's very mature, right? It's very understanding. When you're in a healthy state, you really understand what's going on. You understand yourself, you understand who you are, you understand what you want, and you're confident enough to be able to communicate that in your relationships. And when you find that balance, here's what it looks like as you move towards your goals. You're still going to have ups and downs, but they're less like extreme, right? So you're still having ups and downs, but you're actually moving faster because you're not going up and down so much, and you're staying on path because you know what you want, and then you get to your goal. So that's what we want. We really want to find balance, which is what we're always trying to do anyway. And then we want to know where we're actually going and what's actually important to us so we can stick to the path, as opposed to being on this wild, like, roller coaster ride of life where there's ups and downs and they're very extreme and we're not really clear about where we're going. And then we end up over here in some random place where we're not sure if we actually want to even be there. So just drop a 111 into the chat box if that's making sense for you guys so far. Like, drop a 111 into the chat box, or comment below the video if you're watching the replay and just say yes or 111, just so I know that you guys are understanding this, and if it makes sense for you guys. Yeah, cool. So that's like an overview of how this all works. And really, really interesting stuff in terms of human behavior, right? This is essentially human behavior and let's call it Freudian psychology, right? So if you wanted to look up Sigmund Freud, you could go and have a look at him and you could read some of his work. But yeah, this is, oh, someone's on my whiteboard. Yeah, so you've got human behavior and Freudian psychology, which is what this is essentially here, right? Plus a couple of extra little bits and pieces that I've added, like emotions are an internal guidance system. The universe is perfectly balanced, right? So we're always on this pendulum. So you got to know that you can't actually get off the pendulum. You're always going to be on the pendulum. That doesn't change. The way that you break free from the pendulum, though, is you get to know who you really are, what your values are, what your purpose is, what your vision is, what your mission is. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to do a little exercise for the next half of this call. So have you got I see a few people are saying, yep, they get it, 111, awesome. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat box or you can pop them in the comments. But what we're going to do now is we're actually going to do an exercise to help you find what your values are, what your purpose is, and what your mission is. So I'm going to come over here. We're going to start with values. So the way that you find your values is actually quite simple. A value is just something that you find important, something that you value. You spend a lot of time on that. So what have you spent the most time on this month? So we're in July right now. If you look back at July and you write down in your notebook, what have I spent the most time doing this month? For example, for me, the top one is work. I spent a lot of time working. Then after that, it's family. So let's say, e.g., for me, it's work, family, teaching and learning, and health. So those are the top things. And actually, instead of families, I'm going to call it relationships, because I also spend a lot of time with my friends. So what have you spent the most time doing this month? For me, it's work, relationships, teaching, learning, and health. Those are the things that I spend most of my time doing. So those are my values. Those are the things that I value. And you can go a layer deeper if those words don't resonate with you, or if you write down some words about what you've been doing lately and it doesn't resonate with you, you can also go a little bit deeper. So work is not necessarily a word that resonates with me, but business and community service. Like, I love doing my work. I love my business because it allows me to serve the community. So it's not just work for me, it's business and community service. That's how I see it. And then for me, it's relationships and connection, right? Teaching and learning. And then for me, health is natural health as well. So like, I like doing meditation, breath work. I just go to ice baths. That's pretty fun. I go to sauna. So I like natural health, right? I still go to the gym. I do strength training and stuff like that. But I like to eat pretty healthy. Like, I like to eat, reasonably healthy, natural kind of food. So those, if I elaborate on what I've done over the last month, it looks more like that, right? So you can do that for yourself now. Just take a few minutes to think about what you've actually done over the last month, because that will show you where your values lie. So that's values. Next is purpose. And I really don't like to overcomplicate this stuff, because oftentimes people do overcomplicate this stuff. People make it really, really complicated as to like finding out what's really important to them and what their purpose is and whatnot. The way that I like to do this is, if you were to close down your eyes right now for a few seconds with me, take a deep breath, and just ask yourself this very simple question. What am I here for? What am I here for? And when I say here, I don't mean here on this call with me. I mean here in this life. What am I here for in this life? And then write down the first thing that comes to your head. What's the first thing that comes to your head? What's the primary thought? What am I here for? What naturally comes to your head? Because let me tell you right now, whatever comes to your head is unique to you. For example, for me, it's to help people live well. That's the first thing that comes to my head. It was just to help people live well. Like that's what I like. That's what I love doing. That's my purpose, to help people live well. It's actually the first thing that comes to my head is just to help people, but then, that's pretty vague. So the next kind of words that came up for me were to live well. Like I want to help people, but specifically with living well. I don't want to help people with their tax. I don't want to help people with like their teeth or dentistry or anything like that, right? I want to help people live well. And so that's my purpose. So take a second to tune in and ask yourself that question. What am I here to do? Like, what am I here for in this life? And then next, we have the vision. And so the vision is essentially your visions, right? So when you think about your future, what do you see? It's another very simple question. When you think about your future, what do you see? What do you see in your future? So, for example, you might close down your eyes again, and you might look into your future, and you'll see yourself with a family, or you'll see yourself with a business, or you'll see yourself living at a certain location. For me, I always see myself living at the beach, and I live at the beach now. So, maybe you see yourself driving a certain car, you see yourself with a certain kind of person. What do you see? You see yourself doing specific work. What do you see for your future? When you think about your future, what do you see? And then you just write down your visions, right? Write down your visions. Simple. And then once we've done that, we're going to look at the mission statement. So I know I'm moving a bit quick, but you guys can write this stuff down and you can put it all together in your own time. Then we have the mission statement. So the mission statement is essentially going to be the accumulation of your values, your purpose, and your visions. E.g., this is going to be like I am, I have, I feel. So if you work with me, if you're working with me, you'll understand this. One of the things I teach people in my programs is the mind launch method. And it's really based a lot on this process of becoming, right? And we use different kind of statements. So you'll write a mission statement that is the accumulation of all your values, your purpose, and your visions. So you can start to say like, I am, a thriving business owner who gets to serve my community every day, right? I have a beautiful wife and kids who I love, very much. And what else? So you want to write this in the present tense, right? That's important. Present tense. So you can literally play around with this and write down a mission statement in the present tense. So what else? I feel so grateful that I get to live my values of teaching and learning every single day, right? I am healthy and I get fitter every year. So it's a statement that will comprise your values, your purpose, and your vision. That's the mission statement, right? And it's in the present tense. And you're going to use words like I am, I have, and I feel. This is just an example of mine, right? Mine's not actually like that. It's a bit more thought through. But if you want, you can take a screenshot of this, because if you get clear on this, what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot more clarity about who you really are and who you really want to be. And from there, you can filter all of your decisions through this mission statement, through your values, through your purpose, through your vision. You can ask, okay, well, does this thing that I'm about to do, does it align with my values? Does it align with my purpose? Does it align with my vision and my mission? And if it doesn't, you can then say no. And that's going to help you become more balanced, as opposed to doing things like, if you have all of this really, really clear, and then you continue to do people pleasing and stuff like that, just know that you are essentially self-sabotaging, right? And you will continue to feel emotionally unbalanced, and it will be like suffering. You'll suffer because you know who you want to be, and yet you are not being that person, right? So that is going to cause suffering. That's going to cause struggle. So this is really, really helpful stuff, right? This is kind of like the self-discovery part of the process that I do with my clients. So take a screenshot of that if you haven't already. I will put this up as a resource in the School of Consciousness. If you're in there, I'll put it underneath the video. But yeah, this is essentially really important stuff for self-discovery, for understanding who you are, for understanding what you want out of your life. And from there, once you have that understanding of self-discovery and who you really are, once you've found your true self, what you value, what's important to you, what gives you a sense of meaning, once you've found that, you can filter all of your decisions through that. And then that's going to help you stay balanced, right? And when you stay balanced, you're going to get to where you want to go a lot quicker. You won't be on these massive pendulum swings doing all these things that you don't really want to do. Now, the next part of the process is self-healing. So if you're in my Conscious Creator program, you know that we go through a 3-stage process. Self-discovery, which is kind of like what we just did, but in a bit more detail. Then we go into self-healing, and then we go into self-mastery. So self-discovery is just the first part of the process. Once we find out who you really are, then we move into self-healing. And the self-healing part is important because, like I said, when you are on this pendulum, it can feel very confusing, right? You're swinging from emotions all the way over to people pleasing, back to your emotions, back to people pleasing. And usually the reason why we do that is because we have some unconscious belief systems about who we are. This could be emotional trauma from the past, or events or experiences that have happened in the past that have created a sense of identity about who we are. So once we know who we really are, we still have to clean up a lot of that older stuff. So that's where it comes to self-healing. And then once we've got clear on where we want to go, we've cleaned up the past, then we can move towards self-mastery, which is where you start to feel very confident, very clear, very balanced, very calm, and you can move towards your goals consistently and sustainably without being so emotionally volatile. So if you're interested in the Conscious Creator program, you can go to my website and learn more about that. I'm currently opening applications for that in August. So we're in July right now. So if you want to jump on board in August, applications are open for that. And that is going to be the highest way that I can serve you in going through this process of self-discovery, self-healing, and self-mastery. It includes one-on-one coaching with myself. And yeah, it's just an awesome community to be in. A lot of fun, good crew. Everyone's very supportive. So if you're wanting help with this kind of stuff, that is a great program to jump on board with. We go into a much more detail about everything that we've just talked about today and a lot more. So you can go to the website and apply for that if you want. And otherwise, that's it for today. That is everything that I have. So I will see you all next week.